on a rain-soaked morning in the final year of the Second World War. Somewhere along a nameless stretch of shattered countryside in Western Europe, perhaps near the swollen banks of the Roer River or in the dripping pine forests south of Aachen, Private Samuel Carter disappeared into history without a sound. He was 24. Quiet, soft-spoken, the kind of man who never raised his voice even when the sergeant barked orders. Born in a soot-stained coal camp in eastern Kentucky where the sun seemed to rise late and set early, Samuel had grown up beneath the black breath of the Tippeles, listening to the rattle of coal cars and the low hymns his mother sang while scrubbing work clothes that never came fully clean. He had one younger sister who still wore his old wool coat, too big for her, and a father whose lungs wheezed like a punctured bellows from 32 years underground. When the draft notice arrived in the spring of 1943, Samuel folded it once, placed it carefully on the kitchen table, kissed his mother's forehead, and left without ceremony. He never expected to become a hero. He only wanted to come home whole by the winter of 1940 for C-45. The war had chewed through most of the illusions men carried into it. Samuel's platoon, part of the 84th Infantry Division, the rails P-litters, had been bloodied in the RTGE in Forest, frozen in the snow outside Geilenkirchen, and then thrown again and again against the Siegfried Line. They had learned to sleep standing up, to eat cold sea rations while shells walked the ridge line above them, to recognize the different whistles of incoming 88s, mortars, and Nebelwerfers the way other men recognize bird calls. The night in question began with orders to probe forward and seize a small crossroads village whose name no one could pronounce and whose importance existed only on paper. Rain fell in sheets, turning the fields into a gray slurry of mud and shattered pine. Visibility was measured in yards. The Germans, sensing the end drawing near, fought with the desperate fury of men who knew there would be no retreat behind them. Around 0 to 30 hours, a sudden concentration of artillery came down. German 15 CMSFH 18 howitzers and a few remaining Nebelwerfer batteries that had not yet been silenced. The ground heaved like a living thing. Trees snapped at the base. Men were thrown into the air and slammed back into the earth. Samuel's squad leader screamed something unintelligible into the radio. Then the set exploded in a shower of sparks and molten bakelite when a shell landed 20 feet away. Samuel was lifted off his feet by the same blast. He landed hard, face first in the mud. The wind knocked out of him. His helmet spun away into the darkness. Shrapnel tore through the meat of his left calf. Hot, clean pain followed by a spreading numbness. When he tried to stand, the leg buckled. He crawled toward where he thought the platoon had been, calling names that were swallowed by the roar of more shells. He never found them. The surviving men of the platoon, under orders to fall back immediately or be cut off, withdrew in the only direction still open, southwest, through a shallow draw that offered partial cover. In the chaos, with smoke, rain, and flying dirt reducing the world to a few blurred shapes, no one saw that Carter was missing. No one heard him call. The platoon sergeant later swore he had seen Samuel running with them. Memory is kind in such moments. It fills gaps with what should have been by first light. The crossroads had changed hands twice. American tank destroyers rolled forward, then pulled back under counter-battery fire. German paratroopers counterattacked, or repulsed, counterattacked again. Bodies lay in the mud where they fell, some American, some German, most unrecognizable. When the line finally stabilized 3 days later, the platoon was mustered in a ruined barn. Roll was called. Samuel Carter did not answer. Missing. Presumed cure, the company clerk wrote in the morning report. The same phrase repeated so many times that Winter it had lost nearly all emotional weight. A Western Union telegram reached the Carter home 11 days later. The boy who delivered it was 16. Still too young for the draft. And he stood on the porch with his cap in his hands while Samuel's mother read the words aloud in a voice that never rose above a whisper. His father sat at the kitchen table and stared at the cold stove for 3 hours without moving. The sister, 15 now, simply walked out into the yard and stood under the leafless sycamore until she was soaked through and someone came to lead her back inside. Meanwhile, Samuel Carter had been found shortly before dawn by a German reconnaissance patrol. 3 exhausted Vermont infantrymen and a GUF rider who had once been a baker in Leipzig. They debated shooting him. Instead, they dragged him, half-conscious, onto a horse-drawn Panji wagon already carrying 3 other wounded Americans and 2 of their own men missing legs. He was taken first to a field dressing station, then by truck, then by rail in a boxcar that smelled of coal dust, blood, and fear. Deeper into the shrinking Reich, he spent the next 4 months in Stalag IXB near Bad Orb, then was transferred to a work camp outside Chemnitz where prisoners shoveled rubble, repaired rail lines, and buried the victims of nightly RAF raids. Food was a cup of thin barley soup and a slice of bread that tasted of sawdust. Dysentery moved through the barracks like a slow tide. Men died quietly in their sleep or suddenly, in the middle of the day. Collapsing where they stood, Samuel survived by rationing every calorie, by trading the last of his cigarettes for extra soup, by remembering the exact sound of his mother's voice when she called him in from the porch on summer evenings. He never spoke of escape. There was nowhere to go when the war ended in May 1945. The camp was liberated by elements of the 2nd Infantry Division. Samuel, now weighing 118 pounds and walking with a permanent limp, was photographed. Delouse, given a new uniform that hung on him like a sack, and eventually put on a Liberty ship bound for New York. He arrived in late June 1946. No one was waiting at the pier. He took a train south, then a bus, then walked the last 7 miles up the hollow road to his home. The house looked smaller than he remembered. The porch boards had begun to rot. A new porch swing hung where the old one had been, but no one sat in it. His mother fainted when she opened the door. His father cried for the first time anyone could remember. His sister, now 19 and married, ran from the neighbor's house barefoot and sobbing, but the town had already buried him. His name stood third from the top on the marble war memorial beside the county courthouse, carved in 1945 with 37 other boys from the county who never came home. A small American flag was planted in front of the stone every Memorial Day. His mother had kept his Purple Heart in the cedar chest wrapped in tissue paper. The WW Post had held a brief service. The newspaper printed his photograph, the same one taken at basic training, and ran the headline, "Local hero falls in service to nation," reinstating a man who had been officially dead for more than 18 months proved to be an ordeal of Kafkaesque proportions. The War Department demanded affidavits, fingerprints, dental records, letters from former platoon members who barely remembered him, statements from the camp doctor who had treated his leg wound. The local draft board had already closed his file. His Social Security number had been quietly reassigned. The Veterans Administration initially denied his claim for back pay because the individual in question had been administratively deceased. Eventually, after nearly 2 years of correspondence, hearings, and a personal intervention by a sympathetic congressman whose own son had been killed at Anzio, the records were corrected. His name was removed from the memorial in a small, private ceremony attended by 9 people. The marble was sanded smooth and then re-engraved with the names of 2 more boys who had died in the Pacific after Samuel's supposed death. He never asked for the ceremony to be public. He never spoke to reporters. He took a job as a night watchman at the same coal tipple where his father had worked, walking the empty yards with a flashlight and a thermos of coffee, listening to the wind move through the idle machinery. Samuel Carter lived another 41 years. He married late, at 38, to a widow who had lost her first husband on Okinawa. They had no children. He rarely spoke of the war, though sometimes, late at night when the house was quiet, his wife would find him sitting at the kitchen table staring at nothing, fingers tracing invisible lines across the oilcloth, perhaps the contours of a nameless field in the rain, perhaps the route of a boxcar heading east into Germany. He died in the spring of 1987, quietly, at home, while the dogwoods were in bloom. His obituary in the county paper was brief. Samuel Carter, 66, of Harlan County, veteran of World War II, passed away peacefully. There was no mention of the missing years, the false grave, the name once erased and then laboriously rewritten. History, after all, remembers the famous generals, the decisive battles, the flags raised on mountaintops. It is less generous with the men who simply refused to die when the paperwork said they should have. Samuel Carter was one of those men, and though the stone beside the courthouse no longer bears his name, somewhere in a quiet hollow in Kentucky, beneath a dogwood that blooms every April, whether anyone notices or not, a life continued, thin, stubborn, and almost entirely unnoticed long after the guns had fallen, forever silent. 89.